It's time for The Satisfied Life. You're going to hear a very different voice today. You'll know for sure it's not Pam or Sharon. It's time for Holy Headlines. Good morning, Charles.
Good morning. How's everybody doing?
It is so good to have you back.
Thank you. I always enjoy hanging out with you guys.
Sharon's at college taking care of her internship.
I know. She's being the academic. We love that.
Pam is lost somewhere in the woods on one of her horses.
Just keep yelling, girl. They'll find you.
But Charles Easley, we had to have you back on the show.
Thank you.
You wrote an amazing piece for Q City Metro that I posted all over Facebook. And if you haven't read it, go to Facebook. Living the Satisfied Life is our group page. Please join us and read this piece on Eddie Long.
Yeah.
Why is Eddie Long back on your radar?
He's back on my radar because he's being greedy. You know, I think with the scandal, you would think he would kind of sit down somewhere and kind of lay low. But to have the audacity to say that, you know, these young men are now coming forward with his hush money and saying that, you know, that was not enough. We want to speak up. And, you know, he's upset about it. He's irate. And I'm just really incensed by, you know, this entire incident. You know, we were talking earlier.
Let's go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Bishop Eddie Long.
Right.
Pastor of a megachurch in Atlanta,
Huge.
accused of having inappropriate relationships with young men he mentored in the church.
We say young men, but when they were started, they were actually young boys.
They were boys. You're absolutely right.
16,
Thank you for correcting
16
me.
and 17.
And it didn't go to court.
Right.
However, there was a settlement. And as part of the settlement,
Right.
these young men
Confidentiality.
were not supposed
Right.
to speak out about what happened
Right.
between them
Right.
and the pastor.
Right.
But now several are coming forth and
Right.
saying they would like to write a book.
Right.
Now, that's wrong. If you say, I'm taking this money and I'm not going to say anything,
And I guess
it is wrong to come back around and say, well, I want the money and I want to tell my
right.
story.
And I, on some level, I agree with that. But I think that again, I think we're expecting so much from these youth, who, you know, again, being traumatized, being, you know, ostracized from the church, you know. Basically, and one of the things in the article I quote is they looked at him as a father figure. I mean, they were truly hurt by this incident. And so at the time, you know, unless we've been in that position, maybe, you know, a couple of $100,000 seems like it's going to take away the pain. But I think they learned very quickly that, you know, that is not helping with the healing process. You know, we have to come forward.
Seriously, does a book help with the healing process?
It may not hurt. And I don't know if it's, and again, I don't know if, I'm not going to say that these are angels. I'm sure there is some kind of monetary
motivation
perhaps. But I do feel that I think when you look at people who have kind of survived abuse, and part of the healing is really kind of, you know, sharing that truth and speaking that truth.
You're right about that.
And sort of like what, you know, I guess I get so upset about it because, like we were kind of talking about earlier, that I grew up in the church. And I was very fortunate that, you know, a lot of my early mentors were ministers, were deacons, were just, you know, other men in the church. And that was a very positive experience for me. And so when I look at what was taken away from these young men, I think that's where I really get, you know, kind of incensed. And to add insult to injury, then to have your church home. So it's not just, and I think people don't understand that about people who grew up in the church, especially in the black church, that the church is not just a church, it's like an extended family.
You're
so
absolutely right.
It's really, it would really be about, you know, any young woman coming forward to say that they were, you know, sexually abused by a family member, and then to have the parents themselves say, we don't believe you, and then the extended family
turn against you.
To also turn against you.
Now, in the piece you wrote for Q City Metro, you brought Creflo Dollar into the fray.
Well, actually, Creflo Dollar put himself right in the middle of it.
And what you have him saying on video, I find disturbing. Can you tell us some more about that?
You know, the thing that is even more, I think, insidious about this entire scandal is here you have two very powerful ministers who lead very, you know, mega churches in terms of their following. So their reach and their influence is very impressive. But I think instead of using that in a positive way, it's being used to really bully
To browbeat the victims.
To browbeat not only the victims but also the flock. You know, Creflo Dollar was quoted as never really referencing the incident but calling it a wreck. It was like, okay, this was not a wreck. This was sexual abuse. He basically said that, you know, having, I guess, assumed that there were other church members from
Eddie Long's
church there, he basically said that I don't want you here. So I was like, okay, how about that for a Christian attitude? You know, they're probably struggling there themselves. It's like, you know, well, where do I go? Where do I find some spiritual, you know, guidance and balance? And basically telling them, you know, to get out.
I couldn't imagine being the victim of sexual abuse and sitting in Eddie Long's church. And I know my grandfather was one who said, you never leave your church home.
Right.
Your church home is your family.
Right.
And there will be problems, just like in any family.
Right.
There are areas where you will find dysfunction.
Right.
You will have disagreements.
Right.
But at the end of the day, the next Sunday, you need to be in that same church.
Yeah.
You don't let anyone or anything chase you away from your church. And I believe that's what Creflo Dollar was saying. But the way he was saying it.
And again, I think it was the way he was saying it, to me, it came across as very insensitive. It came across as, again, you really not being, I think, sensitive and really honoring what these young men, you know, have been put through. And not just the young men, but also that congregation.
When is it okay to leave your church?
You know, it's as somebody who grew up in the church, as somebody, you know, is an African-American gay man, you know, issues of sexuality, you know, for me, I think a lot of people leave the church for self-preservation, you know, when it becomes toxic, you know, when it becomes not the environment that is there to nurture and to feed you spiritually. But yet you feel like more is taken away from you than is given. And so from that experience, I know that, you know, that was not an easy decision for these young men. You know, I think again, if you grow up in the church, it's not an easy decision to have to leave your church home. That's very traumatizing.
Absolutely. But there isn't a pastor on this planet who's perfect. Not even the great Billy Graham.
No.
And every pastor will stumble.
Right.
Is there a good reason to stay with Eddie Long? Is there something good to say about what Creflo Dollar was preaching?
Well, you know, it's interesting because, you know, when I love, you know, interacting with my readers and some readers, and I tell them all the time, it's like, guys, you know, I'm not a theology major. You know, I jokingly say if they gave away grades in Vacation Bible School, I'll probably get a D. So I can never challenge them. So I always kind of defer to their more learned, you know, scripture and to that effect. But I think one of the readers said something to the point where it's sort of like along with what you're saying, in that, you know, we do all fall from grace. But I think what is missing is when we fall, we have to acknowledge that we have fallen. You know, on both parts, especially for Eddie Long, he has never acknowledged that he has failed. You know, he's never come forward to say. And I think I would have so much respect for him. I think his congregation would have so much respect for him. And I think really a lot of this would go away if he just said that, you know, I did sin, I did fall, you know, I did, you know, do these inappropriate acts, but I want to be forgiven. I want to continue as your spiritual leader. You know, I want to heal. And I think until, you know, that happens, you know, we're going to still kind of see this ongoing.
I think there are two problems here. Number one, that he hasn't done that.
Right.
And number two, that he may not be able to
Yeah.
because of the legal reasons behind it. So let's hope this goes away sometime very, very soon. And let's hope that phone ringing was Pam Stone. Like we said, she's lost somewhere in the woods. We hope to catch up with her very, very soon. Coming up, you would think that people would have learned by now not to just throw around names like Hitler and Nazi all willy-nilly. Susan Sarandon is at the center of the latest scandal. We'll tell you more about that. And we've got some info you need about flu season. So stay right here. More of The Satisfied Life is coming up next. Was that Pam?
Yeah.
Is she in?
Yeah. You should be able to talk to her.
Hey, Pam. You're
Hey,
in.
lady. How
We
you
told
doing?
people you were lost in the woods.
We're back with The Satisfied Life, presented by Lowe's Foods.
On the link at 107.9.
I don't know if you all heard about this. Welcome back to The Satisfied Life. Susan Sarandon. Love her as an actress. Love her.
Diva.
But last week at the Hamptons Film Festival, she called Pope Benedict XVI a Nazi.
Ooh.
Now, have we learned nothing from Bocephus? You just can't throw around Hitler and Nazi and not expect for people to be offended.
The backlash, yeah.
If everybody is a Nazi, then you take away the power of how horrific that is.
Yeah.
So what is that? Why on earth would she call the Pope a Nazi?
Well, she says he was a member of the Hitler Youth when he was a boy. And that's true.
Yeah.
That's
he
true.
Was, yes.
But it was a requirement for
Yes.
German boys at the time. It's like saying, well, our producer, Brent Bandy Boo O'Brien, was raised in the racist South.
Yeah.
That's where he lived.
Yeah. Same here.
So how can you convict this guy? Because
I mean, he was
by
a kid.
being born in Germany,
you
were a member of the Hitler Youth.
Yes, please.
That's kind of like, the German equivalent of like the Cub Scouts, right?
Well, no, you're absolutely right. It actually a closer parallel to that is, for example, in Israel, every young person does military service for a couple of years. It's the same thing. And my father was German, my grandfather German. My grandfather was actually arrested for speaking out against Hitler in the village that he lived in, and I find it's really irritating for me to hear. What it shows to me is that Susan doesn't know what she's talking about.
Well, that's what Jill
she's
Donahue
uninformed and she's ignorant, and it's embarrassing for her, and she should apologize.
You sound just like the president of the Catholic League. He says her quip about the Pope being a Nazi bespeaks unparalleled ignorance.
Yeah.
It really does. If you have other gripes, that's fine. But
and I think that's what it is. Susan Sarandon is known, both her and her boo, as being very politically active, and I think there are probably more, underlying frustration with the Catholic Church in general.
Yeah.
And she kind of just spoke out of turn.
The president of the Catholic League goes on to say, unlike most others, he not only refused to go to the compulsory meetings, he actually deserted the Hitler Youth, which is precisely why Jews today regard him as a friend, not an enemy.
Right.
In short, what Sarandon said is positively obscene.
It
and
really
I think
is.
something like this could actually hurt her art.
Yeah.
I think it can too, because don't forget when you're calling the Pope such a name, as such a heinous name, you're really offending the millions and millions of people on the planet who hold him sacred.
Right.
And speaking of art, last weekend I went to see the movie Courageous.
So how was it?
It was wonderful.
Really?
Now, when I say wonderful, okay, Charles's other job is as an instructor.
Yeah.
So when I say it was wonderful, I know I am not speaking to the film's special effects or the way it was shot, because it is very cheaply made, and that is very obvious.
So
and
you mean
that we can forgive.
And it is very cheesy at times.
Okay.
I mean, I got lactose intolerant.
Like Lifetime.
However,
movie,
yes. It
like
had,
soft filter.
It had that level of cheese. However, the story was so overwhelmingly positive, and I learned so much from that movie about what God expects of fathers. And it spoke to my abandonment issues that I have with my birth father. Every single issue that fathers face, whether it's, I don't know what to do about my daughter starting to date, or trying to connect with this surly teen son, or not having enough time to spend with the kids, or not connecting to the things that they like, or, the kid you fathered in college who you may not even know, or, the kid who's torn by divorce. All of these things were addressed in such a beautiful way.
Nice.
Not a dry eye in the house. And I am thrilled to say, after 3 weeks at the box office, that theater was packed.
Good.
Wow.
That said something.
So if you haven't seen it yet, please go see this church-backed film. It's called Courageous.
Awesome.
Beautiful
Isn't it
movie.
amazing what simply a good script and actors will do? And this reminds me of the success of the book The Shack.
Yeah.
Just a simple idea, well executed, pleasing to everybody.
Yeah, a parable. We learn by parables. Jesus knew that. And there are some folks in Hollywood who are finally paying attention to, hey, those Christians will go see movies that speak to them.
Well,
they like the parables. Let's give them a couple on film.
I mean, even with, and there are critics that will attack Tyler Perry, but I think one of the reasons he is successful is he understands that. With, some of the kind of quirky characters that are questionable, there's always this kind of positive message that he's trying to reinforce.
And people are going for the message. They're not going for the explosions.
Right.
They're not going for the fancy film work or... the big name stars, they're going for the message. They're craving the message.
And that's what's important. When I'm not fighting crime, as a columnist, my other life is I chair a film program. And that's one of the things that I tell, my students all the time is like, don't try to go after the explosions and the Michael Bay films. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you just tell a story with authenticity and truth and be honest and clear about your intent and your message, there's an audience for that. It's
Absolutely.
proven.
And don't you know Hollywood? Don't you know Hollywood?
And they don't want it. They don't want you to know that.
Well, they're just kicking themselves because they're finally getting that. Wow! All this time, all these decades, we could have been doing these kind of films and raking in millions.
Right. We could spend $5 and make a film that millions of people will pay $10 to see.
Exactly.
Well, moving along to health. We like to talk about what's happening in the Christian headlines, but also like to make sure you know what's going on when it comes to staying healthy. And flu season is right around the corner. Prevention Magazine says there are a couple of things you can do to prepare your body, get the immune system nice and strong before flu season. Let me give you those very quickly before we run out of time, because we have a Hollywood type to talk to next. Leslie Norris from ComedyAngels.com. But you got to eat protein with every single meal. The beef, the beans, the soy, the seafood, all contain zinc, helps your body make more white blood cells. The white blood cells help you fight off the infections.
So there.
5 cups of fruits and veggies a day.
Yes,
Are you there, Charles?
I think you lost me.
No, you just remember this. Charles, all you have to do is remember this. The fruits clean you out and the veggies build you up.
Right.
Yeah, I believe Pam is part carrot.
I am. Same body, same inseam.
Either carrot or celery. I'm not sure.
Do tomatoes on a Big Mac count?
No, they would not.
I don't think. I tried that.
What is wrong with you?
The special sauce is very nutritious. Vitamin A, you got that in the sweet potatoes, the carrots, the leafy greens, vitamin C, the citrus, the bell peppers,
Love
and
bell
broccoli.
pepper.
Nuts and seeds have the vitamin E.
Yeah.
And here's something that the folks at the health food store probably don't want you to know, but don't bother with a bunch of supplements. Talk to your doctor first, because high doses of certain minerals can actually hurt the immune system.
Okay.
Just eat balanced meals. That's all you got to do.
I freak out trying to swallow pills anyway, so that's a good
I
thing.
hate swallowing pills too.
I do too. I can only do it with like warm tea. Otherwise, it ain't gonna happen.
Get 20 to 30 minutes of exercise a day, because physical activity makes the antibodies and white blood cells move through your body faster.
20 to 30.
20 to 30. Oh. I wonder how long it takes to walk from my car to the station. I'm about 5 minutes into this. And don't get drunk.
Oh.
1 or 2 drinks is fine.
Again with that static.
You sounded like Wheezy just then. Don't you be getting drunk.
1 or 2 drinks is fine, but more than that suppresses the immune system. So you're not doing yourself any good.
Deplete your body of vitamin C. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
So if you've got a cold and you're taking all this vitamin C and you're having your glass of wine at night, it's totally sucking the vitamin C right out of your system.
I think we just got Charles to switch to vodka and orange juice.
Yeah, good man. So it cancels it out.
4 food groups, Bloody Mary.
I'm with you on that, baby.
And one more for the health, this one for the mental health. A study out of Brigham Young University finds that kids who watch TV shows with a lot of bad that language are more likely to use that language and also more likely to be physically aggressive.
And this is brought to you by the Department of Duh. Nobody knew that.
Coming up next, we're going to have some fun. Leslie Norris from ComedyAngels.com. Stay right with us.